Welcome to a Capitol celebration, the Nevada State Archives 2021 Archives Month exhibit. Each October is set aside as Archives Month to celebrate our past as we look to the future. This year, we are recognizing the 150th anniversary of the Nevada State Capitol. Our exhibit will provide a timeline of the building through historic photos and documents. Carson City was first chosen as the territorial seat of government by early Nevada settlers like Abraham Curry. At that time, a plot of land in what would eventually become the center of the community was set aside as the location of the future capital. When Nevada achieved statehood in 1864, Carson City was confirmed as the seat of the new state government. Not until 1866 was the official deed for the portion of land set aside for the capital recorded. Second Judicial District Court Judge Samuel Wright served as the trustee for this transaction. The historic deed, shown here, sets the boundaries of the lot as follows: on the north by Musser Street, on the east by Fall Street, on the south by 2nd Street, and on the west by Carson Street. The lot remained empty until the Nevada State Legislature passed Assembly Bill 36, an act to provide for the erection of a state capitol in 1869. This act allotted a sum of $100,000 for construction, called for inmates of the state prison to quarry the sandstone for the exterior walls, and created a board of Capitol Commissioners to oversee the construction and maintenance of the building. The Board of Capitol Commissioners chose Carson City resident Peter Kavanaugh to oversee the project. Cost overruns meant the legislature needed to approve an additional $6,000 on top of the initial $84,000 allotted for construction. Final completion and acceptance of the Capitol occurred in August of 1871. The building had already hosted an inauguration and a legislative session, with the state library and constitutional officers also moved in. The new Capitol towered over the young community of Carson City. An immediate concern was the lack of a decent fence to protect the grounds. In 1875, the legislature approved funding for a more substantial enclosure. Hannah Clapp and Eliza Babcock submitted a winning bid of about $5,500 for the project. They hired Z.B. Ravenel and purchased supplies from Robert Wood & Company of Philadelphia. The majority of this 1875 fence stands to this day. Among exterior improvements carried out over time was the addition of a walkway around the plaza in 1891. Inside the Capitol, the ever-expanding state government began to overflow the available space. The State Library moved into an area formerly occupied by the Clerk of the Supreme Court, with some library volumes placed in the Capitol Dome. Through the years, the Capitol's west steps have served as a stage for important events ranging from inaugurations to presidential visits. Teddy Roosevelt spoke from the decorated front steps during a 1903 visit. These kinds of historic events have reinforced the importance of the Capitol to the people of Nevada. As such, funding the maintenance of the building has remained a legislative priority. The continued growth of state government meant finding new homes for some agencies. In 1906, an annex was constructed off the east side of the Capitol to house the State Library. This annex is of matching sandstone and is connected to the original structure on both the first and second floors. The state legislature authorized $60,000 for another addition to the Capitol in 1913. This extra space would provide room for the Senate and Assembly on the second floor and more office space on the first. State agencies would also use the legislative chambers as office space when that body was not in session. Renowned architect Frederick de Longchamps was chosen to design and oversee construction of the addition. The work took longer than expected, with the completion date being extended from July to December of 1914. Due to the delay, furnishing the upper chambers needed to be rushed for the legislature to meet in January of 1915. The Department of Highways and the Public Service Commission needed to move out of the Capitol to make room for the legislature in 1921. These two agencies were temporarily housed in the Park Hotel just across the street, as seen in the 1916 image taken from the dome. A new home was built for the Supreme Court and State Library in the 1930s. The construction of this building led to the closure of a portion of King Street, changing the view to the west of the Capitol. Technical issues delayed the move to the new location. As seen in this 1937 article, State Librarian Marriage estimated the library collection at 50,000 volumes. The new building provided plenty of room for both the library and the Supreme Court. Another plan to expand the original Capitol was proposed in the 1940s. This expansion would have housed a majority of the government officials and agencies. As shown in these sketches, the wings built by de Longchamps 30 years earlier would have been extended westward, making the building more of a U-shape. The additional space would have housed constitutional officers such as the governor, lieutenant governor, and secretary of state, 7 agencies, plus the legislature. The denial of this expansion led to a new proposal in the 1950s, demolition of the original building with a new one to be constructed on the opposite side of the block. 4 new office buildings would have then been built on the west side of the lot to house a variety of state agencies. The legislature's response to the proposal was to pass Assembly Concurrent Resolution 22 in 1959. ACR 22 stressed the importance of the historic structure to the people of Nevada and called for renovation instead of destruction. The Nevada State Planning Board then came back with a proposed Capitol complex that would include the original structure surrounded by new buildings. The historic Capitol can be seen in the lower left of this sketch, looking a little out of place. The idea of a Capitol complex became more pressing as the legislature outgrew their home of almost a century. As shown in this photo, a variety of furniture was crammed into the space, with some legislators forced to share a small desk between them. In 1969, the legislature approved funding to construct a separate building for themselves. The current Nevada State Legislature was erected south of the Capitol and outside the bounds of the original plaza footprint. The legislative body moved into their new home in 1971, 100 years after they first met in the Capitol. The remaining Capitol occupants moved to temporary quarters while the structure was gutted, the outer walls reinforced, with the interior of the building then reconstructed as close to its previous look as possible. This extensive renovation brought the building current to 1970s safety codes while maintaining the look and feel of the original building. The early 1990s brought more construction to the Capitol complex in the form of the Nevada State Library and Archives building. This image shows the NSLA building, the Capitol, and one of the library's former homes across Carson Street to the west. The Capitol complex continues to evolve. In this image, you can see that the complex is now bounded by Carson Street on the west, Musser Street to the north, Stewart Street to the east, and 5th Street to the south. The original boundary of the plaza can be seen within the white box around the Capitol. The view from the Capitol Dome shows just how much the surroundings have changed in 150 years. In this image from the 1960s, the eastern boundary of Carson City is not too far removed from the downtown area, while this 2018 view shows Carson City spreading out toward the eastern hills. From here, the roofs of the Nevada State Library and Archives and Supreme Court buildings are also visible. The documents and photos we've shared are just a few examples of what it took to maintain the Nevada State Capitol for the past 150 years. More documentary history can be found at the Nevada State Archives. We hope you've enjoyed this brief history of the Nevada State Capitol as our 2021 observance of Archives Month in Nevada. Thank you for watching.